with another list of songs to inspire your studios, teaching and singers. This week we are putting the spotlight on the contemporary musical theatre genre with songs for the male singer. And joining us for this one is performer and singing teacher Conor O'Hara, who has just recently hopped off the train from the Emerald City, touring the UK as cover Bach in Wicked. Amongst Conor's list of 10 songs, we chat about the audition process, what's actually required when we pick our audition songs, and a little sprinkling of vocal exercises that Conor likes to use to help a singer reach a particular vocal target in these songs. Pens and notepads at the ready? It's Conor O'Hara. We had Emily Christian Morris on the podcast for our 200th episode, and in that episode, she said that her dream role has always been Jenna in Waitress, and she announced a couple of weeks ago that she is now going to be playing Jenna in Waitress, I think with the Hanger Theatre Company in Ithaca in New York. So, Conor O'Hara, shall we put it out there? What's your dream role, and what are you going to be telling us in the very near future that you are actually going to be playing?
Oh gosh, that is a question to start, isn't it? Wow, dream role. I mean, it's already been and gone. Jamie Moscato played this role brilliantly when I saw it. Anatole in Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812, I think, is just such a fun role. That's been my hyperfixation for about 3 years straight. So I'm going to say Anatole from the Great Comet.
It's out there now, fluttering away.
It's in the universe. But to be fair, anything that kind of comes the way, you've just got to take it and enjoy it. And so my dream role is actually the next one. That's what I'm going to say.
Oh, look at you being all professional. And Well, Conor, it's lovely to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with us.
It's lovely to be here. I mean, I was telling you before, but I am a long-term enjoyer of the podcast. I started singing teaching in COVID, as a lot of people did. And the podcast in general, and since then, has just been such a pool of knowledge for me to steal other people's ideas from. So that's what I can't thank you enough for, Alexa.
Oh, well, I don't know what I was watching recently, but it was something that said, you can't steal what is a gift. But I've just stolen it, so who knows?
Well, it's a gift. It's a gift.
Can you tell us a little bit about your journey into musical theatre and what it's been like for you so far?
Yes. So I'd say I was probably a late comer into musical theatre. In case you can't tell from my accent, I'm originally from up north. I'm from Doncaster, and I didn't originally come from a musical theatre background. Always enjoyed singing. I will say that singing has always been a passion of mine, but I never really knew that musical theatre could be the career path for me until my late teens, when eventually people, the right people, gave me the encouragement that I needed to turn around to my parents and be like, I'd really like to try and go to drama school, please. Luckily, they were very supportive, and so started the process of auditioning. And in my first year, I knew nothing, wasn't prepared, wasn't ready. And so I ended up going on to the GSA, the Guildford School of Acting foundation course. And that's where I kind of learnt the first bits of my trade, and eventually auditioned the next year and got into Mountview Dramatic Training, where I was on their musical theatre BA program. And so I did 3 years there, graduated, had a great time, learnt all the things that I use today. Is really what made me as a performer and gave me the kind of ethos that I have in my approach to the world of showbiz. And from then graduated into COVID, as I've said, which, to be fair, I think I needed that year. I needed that year to solidify the ideas that I'd learnt, solidify a bit of technique, spent more time being able to break down certain elements that weren't in such a rush to become the finished product, as I think you can often have just naturally as a graduate. You can't wait to get going. And then coming out of COVID, I was very fortunate to get the role of Charlie Rawlins in the premiere of Bedknobs and Broomsticks, the UK premiere tour, which was amazing. I challenge everyone, go and look up that cast of the people who are just involved in that production. It's absolutely stacked with professionals that have such great careers. So as a first job, it was so exciting to be looking left and right and being like, oh my God, look at all these people I've just been watching for years and years and going, oh, I wonder if I'll work with them one day. From then, I've also worked with the RSC in A Christmas Carol in one of their winter seasons. And I've just this January come off the Wicked UK tour.
Yeah. Oh, congrats for everything so far, Conor. And then into Natasha Pierre.
Yes, then into Natasha Pierre.
These days, can you tell us what it's like going from that first email from your agent through the audition process to finding out whether you've got the job or not?
Of course. So there are tendencies, there are patterns, but I will say that a lot of auditions, they work differently in terms of how many of what type of round you have. So I've been through processes that are self-tape, first round, final. Sometimes there's a dance or movement call within that. Obviously, I wouldn't be here if I was more a dancer than anything else. So for me, it is a movement call. And then sometimes there will be more rounds. So I think for Wicked, I ended up doing like 6 or 7 of material, a bit more material. So in terms of what I think is the stereotype for commercial musical theatre, I'd say self-tape, then first round. And that first round, if there is no self-tape, will include your own material. Sometimes the self-tape round is the only round with your own material. And then there might be a recall where you get given a bit more material, and eventually that will build up to a point where the creative team have kind of got their own idea of who they've got in what part, and they'll have their shortlist, and then you'll go into a final round that might be filmed, because a lot of shows have US teams behind them as well, and US production companies that often need clarification and confirmation of who they want as well. And then it's the offer for those fortunate people. Congratulations, you've made it through the gauntlet.
What's been the longest process that you've been involved in?
It has been that Wicked process. That was mainly because, so I covered Bach on the tour, and that was because at first I was in 4 Bach, and so went through all the rounds as Bach. They went to Jed Berry, the wonderful Jed Berry, incredibly talented, incredibly lovely human being, and then gave the call and was like, sadly, it's not gone Conor's way this time, but would he be interested for coming in as cover? Obviously, I said yes, and that was then an extra 2 rounds.
When did you start to feel confident and secure in the repertoire audition book that you'd put together?
I think that came about after Bedknobs. I mean, I think I've always had certain songs that are really strong and that certainly suit me, my energy, my look, castability very well. I've always tried to know that and play to that. So I think that they have been good choices. I think the ability to walk in the room and never, and for audio listeners, I'm scrunching up my face and crossing my fingers, but to never hit and hope the top note or any of the tricky sections that you have to navigate. I think that didn't come about until I was into my second job, really.
How many songs do you actually have in your folder?
In my folder, or that I actively use?
Let's say actively use, because I can imagine it's quite a different number.
Yes, it is a different number. Absolutely. I mean, I've got a chest of drawers to my left, and there are a whole 2 drawers that are just filled with different material, obviously organized into style and range and all sorts.
Perfect.
Soft flex there. But I'd say that I tend to circle around 6, I'm going to say. But that is for every audition. We're not just talking contemporary there, right? There is pop in there. There is legit options in there. So it might be between like 6 and 8, but it tends to be like 2 songs that fit within a style that I tend to switch between, whether I want to go a bit more ballad, a bit more up tempo, is it youthful, which obviously we'll get into when we look at the list of why these options kind of exist, but they're the options that have little levers to pull on so that I can basically get in the room and tell the story in the most efficient way.
I think we all have our song, don't we? It's almost like a go-to sort of thing. And when I was auditioning, my go-tos were Still Hurting the last 5 years. And you were always told, don't take a Jason Robert Brown that has some form of really difficult piano part in it. But I think it depends, doesn't it, on that viewpoint?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I am a lower to average piano player at best, but I'd say I've never had a piece of music played badly in an audition before. Very fortunate that I can say that. I think MDs these days are at a really high standard, especially a lot of MDs have taught in colleges. Jason Robert Brown's very popular. Look, if I'm taking King of the World into an audition and expecting the piano player to whack out the opening intro, then maybe I'm a bit cruel. But I have a Jason Robert Brown in my rep. I take one of the songs from Parade in. Potentially look at the sheet music. If there's an awful lot of dots, maybe run it past an MD. If you or a friend or that happens to know sheet music, or your singing teacher might be able to give a hand on that. But I like to think that a lot of MDs these days they're very good piano players.
Yeah, I never had any issue with that. And weirdly, I got my cruise ship job with that song. And in my recall, I took my other go-to, which was Ironic by Alanis Morissette. But without giving away all of your clues, what is your kind of most dependable friend?
Oh, which one do I go for? I kind of have two. I'd say my most dependable in terms of there is zero hit and hope about it, and I can always kind of fall back, is There's Always Tomorrow from Peter Pan by Styles and Drew. It's youthful. It doesn't go too high. I think it's only around like the G4, something like that. So it's one of those that you wake up and all of a sudden you've got the cold that your primary school teacher wife has given you. And you still feel like you can walk in and feel confident. There's Always Tomorrow from Peter Pan by Styles and Drew. I think that's my kind of nice, comfortable, safe, reliable song.
Like I just said, I took in Still Hurting from the last 5 years to Debbie O'Brien casting for Aida Cruises. Now that it's not your typical thing to take into a cruise ship audition. So where do you stand on the suitability? Does it really matter what you take in if you're showing, your vocal skills, or actually is it quite important for you to consider the role you're up for, etc.?
This is obviously the interesting debate. The simple answer is a bit of both, but I'm not going to just rest on that answer. I think that obviously there are a couple of factors at play. You've got your castability, your energy, and what you bring. That is obviously the first and foremost important thing, because if you're not true to yourself and you as what you want to offer creatively, then it's not going to ring true. It's not going to be truthful. So I think something that sits in you at first is the most important thing. Then there is a case of what are you going in for as the second most important thing. So are you being called in for a specific role? Are you being called in for cover? Are you being called in for ensemble? All these things. Is it a new role? Is it old? For example, take The Great Gatsby. It's just on the West End right now. and you get called in for the role of Gatsby, you can have a listen to those songs and instantly 5 songs pop into your head, especially when you've got Jeremy Jordan on the cast recording, doing wonderful Jeremy Jordan things. You can go through an entire discography of things that have sat well in his voice and that clearly the writing mirrors slightly and go, that is the song for this audition. That's a bit of advice that I remember picking up from casting director Danielle Torrento. She was very big on what is the role you're in for? Pick another show that basically has the song that they sing in it, just sung by a different named character. Because those parallels exist, those stereotypes exist in theatre. But then, at the same time, we all know anomalies to these examples. You've just mentioned Still Hurting. You're going up for a cruise, and that has its own set of requirements. You're not exactly pinpointing down on a specific casting need, but you're showing your voice. You're showing what your voice can do. It sits comfortable. You're clearly showing dynamic range and options. That's all a casting team really need is, are you making these sounds that will fit this job? I know people that take in the same song into every audition, and if it's a rock musical, they'll just sing it a bit more rocky. And if it's like contemporary legit, if it has far more legit influence, they will just whack on those techniques. That's where, like, working with your singing teacher to be able to access these areas of your voice ends up becoming really important, because you're able to use the same song but sing it in a completely different way. Again, coming back to who you are makes a big difference. Myself, I know my casting. I know what energy I give off when I walk into the room. And a lot of the time, the roles that I'm called in for reflect that. So there is often a trajectory of high energy. If I'm going in and I'm singing like a really dreary ballad, or if I deciding to go in the complete opposite way of my casting that they expect for that job, I've not really fulfilled my duty as an artist. But I have songs in my repertoire that feel comfortable, that can at least be molded slightly to most situations for that reason.
This might be a controversial question. Do you think it's slightly more difficult for a female artist to go into the room with that particular viewpoint on repertoire compared to a male performer?
The answer I wish to give is no, but the answer, I do think it matters. I do think there is a difference. I don't think that is just about, obviously, certain factors. There are a lot of women in the industry, a lot of very good women in the industry as well. It's such a competitive area, whereas there is slightly less competition for men, but it's still competitive. With that, I don't think it's just a matter of competition. I also think it is a matter of what is asked by the male voice in musical theatre as opposed to the female voice in musical theatre. For example, we've touched on the fact that people take in the same song and put on whatever stylistic shift they feel is necessary for men. I think that's because that shift is a lot smaller than for the female voice. I mean, this comes into what is contemporary musical theatre for men. The envelope is massive. You know, as kind of contemporary musical theatre is, it is inspired by so many different styles of music. You've got, obviously, pop, rock, soul, R&B, gospel. There's still elements of jazz. Pre-2000s, there's so much material as well. We've got disco. There is so much, even world music as well, if something is like Bollywood inspired and things like that. There is such a wide variety of sounds that can be made, especially because men don't approach their passaggio until a lot later than women do. You have so many more options to pull upon, and therefore when in those styles, when in contemporary style, and even now in contemporary legit, if we look at the way that people sing in shows like Les Mis and Phantom, there are a lot more acceptable options that come from different styles of contemporary commercial music. And I think that because that shift is bigger for the female voice as opposed to the male voice, where you're still in your M1 for most of it, I think that it's more about where in that color palette can I pull from.
You've touched upon there how broad this subgenre is, and you have prepared us a list of 10 songs that could fit into this category for our male presenting performers. You have omitted some as a caveat, so could you just tell us about those before we hit your list?
Yes, so I wanted my list to have a couple of themes, a couple of trends. So I wanted my list to be very useful for the testosterone-based voice in auditioning for the current musical theatre landscape, in terms of which shows on the West End and on tour actually ask for a musical theatre song. Also, I want the list to be useful to the pre-training singer that is auditioning for drama school or other courses. So the type of songs that I have omitted for reasons are, I'm going to say the heavily rock pop inspired high tenor belting songs. So your Soul of a Man, your Step One, your Goodbye from Catch Me If You Can. I love these songs. Anyone who knew me at drama school would know that I would attempt to sing these songs quite constantly. As a technical goal, they're great. They're incredible. I think that for auditions, there's two factors. Number one is that I think there are better songs to tell stories through, that the casting team isn't just sat there waiting for the B flat and going, okay, monkey, jump. You know, if a casting team was to hear that for every male that came in, I think that they'd get a bit bored. And like I say, they are wonderful in the fact that they are broad. I think out of situ, out of the context of the show, it's a lot harder to really lock into what that dramatic moment is in a audition situation. I also know that, for example, Back to the Future, which is a musical that sings in a very similar style, doesn't actually require an MT song. It requires a song in the style of the show that is often from the pop repertoire. So a lot of those shows want to hear something that is from actual contemporary commercial music rather than something in the MT repertoire, which is where going and listening to the top 10 songs for pop is a really good podcast to go and listen back to.
Look at you, Conor. You're referencing for us. Thank you.
You've got to. And then the second type of song that I've omitted, I've tried to hint at it with one specific choice, but it's just character songs in general. I think, once again, these are great songs in terms of you can definitely take these to a drama school audition. And I think that they definitely will show a panel what you can bring as an actor. And that is to be cherished and championed and is absolutely brilliant. A lot of the time, what I come across in the current audition world, in the professional world, is the specific phrase, no character songs, or no songs where you're pretending to be a child, things like that, that I think so much of the modern casting team for the first round for your own material are mainly trying to get a grasp of you and your voice and where you fit in that jigsaw puzzle of a show, that they need to hear the sounds that you can produce. And if you can do that with a song that also gives you the chance to showcase a really good story, then that makes that the best choice. That's my opinion. There's always going to be an anomaly to the rule. If Soul of a Man is your go-to song and you smash that out the park and no one can touch you with a barge pole with it, take that to every audition that you can and book the jobs. But that is just my experience, my opinion.
Hey you! If you're enjoying the Singing Teachers Talk podcast, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We are committed to bringing you engaging conversations and valuable insights from experts across the field of voice. By subscribing, it means we can continue to do that. You'll never miss an episode, and you'll be helping to spread the word to other singing teachers, vocal coaches, and overall voice nerds. So subscribe to this channel now and just watch your teaching grow. Let's dive straight into your list.
Let's dive in.
What do you want to kick off with?
So, again, in the sense of I like to order and theme things, I have split my list into two halves. So the first half, I want to kind of talk about the sounds that we are creating. So they are sound target focused, but they're also very good audition songs. Like, I've at least used some of them for auditions before. I know people that do use them for auditions. And then the second half of the list is really good audition songs for the performer that is looking to go into training. I've tried to make them really accessible for a multitude of voices. But to start with, at number one in my list is You Don't Need to Love Me from If Then. So if no one knows the show, like in terms of, we like talking about story here, it is the most important thing. It's sung by the character of Lucas, and he is talking about his love for his friend Beth after they have just spent the night together. But it is a bit of an unrequited love, and it's very supportive of Beth from Lucas's perspective. In terms of range, what we're looking at, it's a C3 to an A flat 4, but those A flat 4s only occur, like there's 3 of them in the whole song. This is what poses the challenge for the singer, is the fact that it stays very much around the speaking range, where we very much get into that type of speech quality, if you will, but it's not too challenging near the passaggio in terms of taking speech quality that high, in terms of it sits on You Don't Need to Love Me or Tell Me That You Do. But we have 3 instances where we pop onto an A flat, and so that is Keep on Being Lonely is the first one, which I just love as a vehicle for kind of teaching that testosterone-based voice. You don't need to jack up the effort when we get up there. Not everything is yelling. Let's get a nice closed vowel up there. We've got a nice consonant before, so it's just a really good tester for that really good training song. And eventually it opens up. So Keep on Being Lonely, We Don't Have to Be Apart, and I'll Never Even Ask You. So for that as well, if we're thinking of storytelling, you can start, like saying, that nice controlled, more mixy area, and then you slowly open up into a bolder sound, if we dare call it belt. That is my first song of You Don't Need to Love Me. I think it's brilliant in terms of, like say, you're still looking at achieving line, even though we're in a contemporary genre, and it just is really good for making the male singer find what is this speech quality. I think both tenors and baritones can apply themselves to this area of the range in a very similar way.
What's your number 2?
So, just so you all know where I'm going with this progression, is now the tessitura of this next song is going a bit higher. So whereas the first one was very much pre-passaggio of its speech quality, and where it sits in the contemporary genre, we're now going into a bit more of a poppy world in terms of style, but also the pitch lifts slightly for the majority of the song. And it's Stranger in This World from Taboo. Boy George was the lyricist on it, along with a bunch of other writers. It's a song that very much explores queer identity and the feeling of being misunderstood. It takes place in like Thatcher era Britain. So there's a lot of that kind of new romantic era pop vibe to it. And again, most of the verse ends up working on a descending scale, which we absolutely love for being able to start the pliability in that male voice, because we all know, I mean, there are people that will be the opposite ends of the scale. I'd say 8% of the men I work with are take chest higher and really struggle to thin out at first. And then you will get, especially with like some accents, will lend themselves to far more thyroid tilt than others. But I think across the majority, most men will be struggling with navigating that passaggio at first. I think because this song starts on the E and then works downwards, it's a really good tool to be like just slightly higher, but we're not needing to make a massive shift yet for either voice. The baritone's obviously going to find it a bit more challenging than the tenor. The tenor will have more options here, and then we can bring that down. So the verse is very light, very poppy. In terms of range, this is C3 to G4. So again, we're not going too high, but those G4s are more sustained, far more kind of impactful, if we want to look at that. They have those moments of pricking up the ears of the casting director or the audience, wherever you want to perform this. And they have those moments of excitement along with that much lighter speech quality sound, which, to be fair, as a progression, this is a song I return to time and time again in both teaching and my own practice, because that area of the voice, just coming back to what options do we have here, how adducted do the folds need to be, it's so accessible that I think it's a song that actually every testosterone-based voice could look at having in their repertoire. Now we're getting into Tenorville. So I will drop song 3 in Tenorville. It is For Forever from Dear Evan Hansen. I think any of the Dear Evan Hansen ones are phenomenal songs. The reason I chose For Forever is it's the easiest to cut, along with being really accessible for telling the story. I love Words Fail, but it is like 5 minutes long, even longer, maybe. I can't really remember, but it is a marathon of a song. At least with For Forever, you take it from verse 2 and you're cutting out a good portion of the song. And I think that people don't mind being jumped right into the action. Obviously, we are now accessing belt far more frequently on far more different vowels. So is it even belt anymore? That's the question. Because I think that when accessing what is belt for the male voice, I think that in a way, because we spend so much time in our M1, we are very accustomed to there. It's going to be less impactful than you think. I truly think. I don't think it's exactly the same sound, or at least the same, like, moving from where you are to that sound where the singer comes from. Like, you'll know from a lot of the females that you teach, there is a case of we need to really find that chest some way or another, that sometimes there is more activation that needs to be had. There will be the exception. There will be the boy out there that is very heavy on thyroid tilt that needs that more bulk to the sound. But for the majority, it's a lot less impactful than you think. And I spent far too many years during my teens thinking it's just yelling really high, and without being like, I know in my experience, it's quite a tilted sound. I think that it's a big portion of actually making a nice palatable belt sound. I think we mentioned Jeremy Jordan talking about Great Gatsby. When I hear his belt, I hear a lot of sweetness in there. It's a very sweet sound. And I think, again, Ben Platt's quite similar. For Forever as a vehicle for finding this, I think it's a great opportunity to do that.
What is an exercise that you find yourself going to quite a bit when you're working with male singers on belt?
A lot of the time it comes from this way that I certainly found it, and a way that I've seen a lot of success with it is from voice play. And here's the funny thing, like I said, I wasn't exactly musical theatre when I was growing up. I played a lot of football and I used to go and watch Doncaster Rovers every week with my dad. And so I'm very accustomed to a football chant, right? And so when I listen to Liverpool fans sing You'll Never Walk Alone, they turn the music off and let them carry on, then bring it back in quite often. And I've never really heard them go flat. There might be occasional, but as a chorus, they stay pretty on tune. But they are certainly on a thick fold mass. They are certainly hefty. And we don't need that much heft when it comes to singing. But certainly as a vehicle, I find that finding that kind of football chanty area and then adding our ingredients that we need to take range up that thyroid tilt is a really good starting point for this is what a good contact is on this thicker sound without really pushing and really accelerating the air, which I think a lot of people just think that's what I'm going to do because I need to be high and I need to be loud. Whereas it's more the thought of it's not loud, it's bold. If I give a demonstration of a football chant, it's kind of finding that you'll never walk, like it, just finding that sound is just a good way that then when we can start to take sweetness and lift it up, I think is a good key in to the sound. And then you can obviously take like scoops up your woes, your yays, all those type of scales that we use, but as a vehicle to kind of go, what is this sound when it is in a state of flow? I think working in that form of the speaking voice first is a really good feet in the shallow end way to find it.
What I really like about the football, I call it the football hooligan, which is a real stereotyped character.
It's strong imagery. It's strong imagery.
But I always think that it helps with, or what I find is that it helps with laryngeal stability in belting, because yes, we talk about maybe there being a slightly higher larynx or neutrally high larynx for belting. I think that, hey, wait, it just allows the larynx to stay nice and stable for the sound. And that's what I heard in your example just there. It was a stable larynx, but the resonance was there. You're very welcome.
I try. Yeah, and I think it's interesting, like we talk about high larynx for belting and it's certainly there, but especially because most people will be coming from a potential attractor state experience of high pressure, high airflow, trying to lift the larynx so much just to get the note, just so that we can get the folds tense enough to vibrate that quickly, that often it's an actual darker sound than what they might be used to. So there might be a sensation for the singer of a drop back or a up and back, or there is a sense of an acoustic shift that, because it's darker, tends to have a sense of backwardness to it, rather than constantly searching for something that's really kind of bright. And that is accessible. I think that there are singers that operate in that type of larynx space, that laryngeal space, but I mean, often they're not on as weightier folds as some material might ask for. Like, would I take this sound that we're looking at in For Forever onto what I mentioned earlier with Goodbye for the whole song? Absolutely not. And that's where finding that lighter space that is the reason it sounds loud is because of the higher harmonics being boosted. When I think about belt, I think of like this chorly, weighty sound. That is far more a case of this stable larynx, as you said. So song number 4 that I picked, and this is really when I mentioned the caveat of someone that takes one single song to every audition, just changes the vibe. I've got Anthem from Chess. Now, I think that this definitely sits far more in the contemporary legit area of musical theatre, but obviously it's written by Tim Rice and Benny and Bjorn from ABBA. So it in terms of its influence, it's got so much pop influence into it that it's a very moldable song. And the reason it's here in this list is because it sits so much in that both worlds of contemporary and contemporary legit, that if you have a singer, for example, that is really legit inspired, gravitates towards those sounds, it's a really good song to be like, you can do it occasionally, but we're now going to look at the shifts. And I think there are those clear shifts in this, even going between the phrases. How could I leave her? Where would I start? Is like just using that where again, coming back to that calling posture, if we call it, it's a really good anchor for that. And vice versa. If you've got a, for example, very heavy, dark voice that loves to kind of sit on this cally end of the spectrum and sits there very well, but struggles to find any light and bright, it's a really good song to experience those elements of the voice in without it being too challenging melodically. I think because it sits C#3 to G4, it's very accessible in the range for both tenor and baritones to find that difference of vocal fold shift. And obviously, like I said, in terms of, we've talked, is a song overdone? Is a song inappropriate? I think that because this song has such a element of what you're getting, where everything fits when you're listening to it, that if someone walks in and sings this very, very well, I mean, I'd recall them because they've done the job. It's a very good song for, this is what sounds you like to hear, and here are the sounds organized in a lovely piece that has tons of passion to tell the story through as well. So just to show the power of this song out of context, I know people that have sung this for Wicked and have gotten cover Fiero, and I also know people that have took it to Book of Mormon, which you would not associate with this song at all, and have also booked those jobs. So again, it comes back to, what do casting directors and teams, MDs, hear, and whether they are doing it consciously or subconsciously, there is an element of, I know that sound, I've heard it before, I like it, that fits in my show.
And then song number 5 to round up this first part of your selection.
And to draw part 1 to a close, I've picked Hero and Leander from Myths and Hymns. I know on one of the previous top 10s, you mentioned Awaiting You. I think that this also is a great song that needs a mention, because as much as For Forever has had moments of, what might be seen as head voice, M2, falsetto, whatever we kind of want to organize it as, Hero and Leander really blends that flexibility, which I think, especially when we're seeing the rise of Hades Town and when we're seeing in Great Gatsby that there is an awful lot of thinner fold mass and different resonant spaces in those songs, that a song that really prioritizes moving flexibly and dropping in and out of different resonant spaces, I think it's a phenomenal tool to use. In terms of range, you've still got something that might come close to a bold sound, like a belt or heavy mix, whatever we want to call it. The A4 is there, but it moves into head voice and goes up to the D5. And so as a vehicle, I think that if you want to just pick out the head voice sections and work on those little riffs as scales, I think that's a really good idea. If you're using it as a way to blend the two and as a vehicle for that, I think it's very useful for the male voice.
And how do you help male voice to find, thyroid tilt, as you mentioned before, or a thinner vocal fold mass? Have you got a particular sound or exercise you like to go to for that?
So, I mean, it changes depending on how far we want to go on that. I think that simply using our triggers to like, are really sad, all that kind of tilting triggers. I think what I've oddly found with a lot of men is that empathy tends to work a lot faster than like feeling really sad. So something like I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm like, I can't believe this has happened to something that comes from there is a bit of an easier emotion to latch onto than, oh no, I'm really sad. That I think it might have a little commentary on what it means to be vulnerable in a one-to-one space there. I think that is hard for everyone and should be applauded in what students bring to the lesson. But just for me, that type of trigger tends to work a bit more. Also, what I find is work slower. Work slower. I think that it can be very easy, especially for someone to have never, if they've never experienced it before, to kind of think, oh well, I'm doing it, and then we come on to singing, and we're like, all we see is, oh, but I'm like really tilted, and it's really hard. Whereas the slower we can move through our vowels and through the voice, I think it really highlights to the singer what that sensation versus auditory outcome, what that is.
I think there's a research project in this, Connor. If someone hasn't done it so far, it's like
there's at least 5 PhDs in.
Yeah, there is. I'm thinking, about societal structures and the roles of gender in society and the different emotive sounds we ask of them.
It's same for all genders as well. We live in such I have to be like physically fit and really buff and have six-pack abs all the time that even just that ability to release, it has to be really trained out of it. I know I'm not perfect on that regard, that, there is a pressure in society to be, if we are talking about males specifically, just because of this list, there is such a case of, I'm going to be big and manly and I have to talk like this all the time and have to really look everything up and be really strong. And I think that in order to get flexibility in the voice, we also have to get flexibility and movement everywhere else. Also, in terms of finding thinner fold mass, even just taking someone down to like a and going up the range and allowing that for the first time, that to travel into a something so small that they might have not experienced, especially as well for the singing teacher, you can hear a lot. It gives you that time to really analyze and go, I heard something squeezed somewhere. What is it? Do they need more stability, like in terms of internal shape stability, or do we need to look at what the airflow is doing, or is it simply a case of organizing where the singer wants to put the sound in terms of a target sound? I think coming back to those small sounds for men, because I don't think, I didn't start making those sounds until I started singing training. I mean, not everyone's me, but I think that it's sounds that we don't tend to access a lot. I think it's something that men have to become accustomed to now with the way that repertoire is moving, regardless of FARC as well, because, like I say, again, he gets a lot of mentions on the podcast. George Ezra uses those flips a lot, definitely not living in the same space as like when you sing Frankie Valli and Jersey Boys, but still needs access to those other resonant spaces.
So from number 6, then, we are going on to material that it can be used in the drama school audition. So we need to know these for teachers who are working with people who are about to go into that in the new academic year, and for singers who might be listening. So what's kicking us off on that?
So kicking us off on this is Maybe We Just Made Love from I Love You Because. There's a little bit of a theme of, we started the first half with a song that happens after two people have spent the night together. This is exactly the same. The the character of Austin has just spent the night together with Marcy and is contemplating whether they are actually in love. It's a delightful song. It goes up to the F sharp, so it's really accessible for multiple voice types for the voice before training. And also, it gives a great opportunity to show some comedy chops. And in a time where I like to put a lot of ballads in, I think we need to show that occasionally.
There was one song that actually reminded me of that, and it's from First Date, the musical, called In Love with You, I think. And it's the male character. His name also begins with an A, but I can't remember what it is. I want to say Aaron or Adam or something like that. It's not Austin, but it's like that. And he's talking about somebody that he was in love with, but then all of the things that
Yes.
maddens him about her. So I like those two.
Very similar, and that's the thing, there are many similar songs than songs on this list. That's why like Spotify radio is a joy. There are so many playlists out there, just typing in like male musical theatre and just going through that list and finding different ones. I think that you can't go wrong. It certainly saved me when I had to do a lot of catching up when I started at GSA. Song number 7 is a classic. It's a song I return to as a listener time and time again, and it's Who I'd Be from Shrek. Wonderful song. Again, I think it goes up to the F sharp. So again, we're looking at accessible material for different voice types. Obviously, the hard one here is that F sharp is on big. Again, if you're someone who likes to just jack up effort and shout as we get higher, it's not exactly going to work. It might work once out of 10 times, but, just really accessing that flexibility when we're approaching narrower vowels.
And who hasn't had that cranked up in the car? And imagining, for me, I'm Princess Fiona, and I'll go always hide all the time.
It's when Brian Darcy James sings like, and have a hero's ending. I'm like, oh, get me that all the time. He's brilliant.
How do you cut something like that? Because obviously Fiona does come in and sing her bit while Shrek is doing something else, and they have this lovely like harmonized overlap. So how do you go about cutting music like this?
So it tends to kind of be specific to the song, I find. Obviously, approach this if you aren't too confident on music theory yourself. Seek out someone who might be a bit stronger on it. But for this song specifically, I just cut it after, but not for me. I just cut it there, and Fiona can have her song in an
Another
alternate
time.
universe. Yeah, another time. But it happens occasionally, I think. There's the song Answer Me from the band's Visit, which I absolutely love. I love the band's Visit.
Oh my gosh.
So great. And it's, again, wonderful song. Go check it out. It's delightfully vulnerable and brilliant. But that obviously has multiple characters and ensemble come in at the end, to which I would then pick whoever has the melody at that point and sing that melody as if you are the same character, singing that on different thoughts. And as I cut the music, you just cut out the ensemble bits and make sure that it's still legible, that the piano player can see the line that you are singing in order to keep up should they lose their place. So that's how I'd cut songs that kind of have multiple characters and sometimes ensembles. If you are cutting a song, I wouldn't be too precious over what you omit, especially if a school or audition brief asks for something like a minute, 2 minutes. I'd be aware on the other side of the panel, like I've had to take auditions before for drama schools. I'd be aware on the other side of the panel that is the requirement, and therefore I am willing to be dropped into the action. This is where, when we talk about obscure songs, that can sometimes be hard because there's a reason songs are popular. Again, we talk about Anthem. I know where I am. I know what this is. I can fully lose myself in your version of this song because there is a suspension of disbelief of this is the space we're in, this is the character. And then in terms of with singing teacher hat on is in terms of a male, I'd kind of have the checklist of, are you showing a good contact of speech quality? Are you showing a good contact of voice quality? Are you showing a good contact of sound quality? And then in terms of female, I'd kind of have the checklist of, are you showing a good contact of speech quality? Are you showing a good contact of voice quality? And then in terms of Are you showing an ability to play within that, both stylistically and through the storytelling? And then are you able to show a pliability across the range where you are showing that note does not dictate your fold mass and air pressure, that you have control over it? And then maybe one or two moments where you show a bit of boldness. It sounds very paint by numbers. I don't want it to be, because it should be storytelling led. But in terms of, if you're like, oh, I don't want to lose this bit because this is the top A at the end. You've got a G and an A flat a verse earlier. Can you achieve the same sound on it for the same storytelling payoff? You don't have to be so precious on, I've just got to show all the bits that I'm really high and loud all the time. That's the joy of when you have, obviously, if you're, and we get this far more with contemporary than we do other styles, so we're lucky in this regard, but a lot of them tend to follow a bit more of a Western pop structure where we've got the verse, we've got the chorus, we've got a bridge, and sometimes within that, what can be an absolute lifesaver in a pinch, especially, like say, if I'm having to cut music really, really quick. I remember I actually had to do that for the Royal Scotland Conservatoire auditions. There was their recall, you have to cut really quickly to splice in a monologue into the song that you've brought. And I tell you what, chord symbols, let's just, just go on, what key is it in? Right, okay, we're in A. Where's the chord symbol of A? I'm just going to end there. Or like, I'm just going to attach, a block chord. Knowing those rough things of does it resolve can be a really useful shorthand. And again, like I say, you can go, well, that chord sequence is the same as the chord sequence for this bit in the musical. And you don't exactly need to read sheet music for that. Yeah.
Number 8 for you though, Conor.
So number 8 is I'm Alive from Next to Normal. I think in terms of rock influenced MT that has a great story to tell, I mean, it's a great song, whether that is the Aaron Tveit version or recently Jack Wolf in his portrayal, phenomenal. A great song as well to showcase that ability to be more flexible for a sustained period of time at the top of the range. The range is only, I think, I've got it written down here, G3 to G4 with like a falsetto up onto the D5. We're only covering an octave, but because it spends so much time Passaggio based, someone can bring that, can show that flexibility. I mean, I'll be like, yeah, fair play. I think that it ticks all the boxes, really, as a song for that particular genre. And that's quite an easy one. I can get straight on to number 9. Going slightly into a bit more of a soul and gospel orientated song, I've got Let It Sing from Violet. Another Jeanine Tesori musical, obviously I mentioned Shrek. I think if you're looking at musical theatre contemporary writers, she's an amazing one to look at. But obviously this one showcases an ability to riff if this is more your style. Obviously has those soul and gospel influences. Something has to be said of very much take into account that this is sung by an African-American man and takes place shortly after the civil rights movement in the 1960s. So with those kind of cultural aspects, I wouldn't be taking this song personally into an audition. I might sing it in the car and might work on certain riff patterns that are within the song. But I think that we have to be very clued into the historical context that the song resides in. In terms of things that this is really useful as well, is that this is one of those songs that has ad-lib written into the sheet music. So there is a expression there that is very appropriate for you to put your own spin on how you interpret the storytelling there with those riffs. So there's a lot of room for play there, and rightfully so, because it's, that is a part of those musical styles, and it's important that we showcase that. And then number 10, I might as well just call this slot the pick whichever Disney song sits best in your voice slot, because I think there's a reason Disney's so popular. There's a reason there's so many musicals of it. I've picked Her Voice from The Little Mermaid. I think it's a great all-rounder. Again, we've gone C3 to G4, showcases exactly what we need in terms of there are moments for exciting sounds. It definitely showcases times where we can lighten up the fold mass and use some higher harmonics. If you do want something a bit more sustainable, go towards your Santa Fe's, go towards your Endless Nights from The Lion King. And then if you feel like you're a bit more baritone-y, I mean, they replaced it with Wild Uncharted Waters in the film. So you've got that as options and many, many more. Just even typing in Disney male songs, you find a plethora of wonderful choices. I don't think you can really go wrong with a Disney song.
Yeah. What's your favorite Disney show?
My favorite Disney show. Can I just say Bedknobs and Broomsticks because I was in it?
We'll allow it. We'll allow it for today.
No, I think I'll pick Newsies. I think there's a reason that it is so popular as a young musical theatre male. This is the third time I've mentioned Jeremy Jordan this episode. I mean,
he's amazing.
He's amazing. And also, like, there are many wonderful examples of great contemporary musical theatre singing. Brian Darcy James, Jeremy Jordan, Aaron Tveit. We've got Jamie Moscato on the West End at the minute. Ben Joyce, to pick some UK males out. Wonderful examples of so much of what we've talked about today. Even just like checking them out. Gavin Creel.
I must slip in at this point that I had, and probably still have, a huge crush on the cartoon Aladdin.
That's fair. I'll allow that. So would Aladdin be your favourite Disney show, or?
Aladdin was my favourite when I was younger. Now I'm a Hunchback gal.
I mean, Hunchback's amazing. This is where I'll caveat Hunchback of it sits a bit more contemporary legit for the males, so it doesn't quite have the same foot in this conversation. But I mean, yeah, who doesn't dream of being Quasimodo?
And if you hear the bells of Notre Dame, I mean, it's like absolute goosebump land. Oh, Conor, it's been so lovely to chat. Can you tell us about your teaching? Where can we find you? Where can we book a lesson with you?
Yes, I am on social media. I'm on Instagram as @ConorCoaches. That is Conor with one singular N. You can find me on my privates @_Conor O'Hara_. But in terms of reaching out for singing lessons, my coaching page, I'm far more frequently checking for those type of messages. I think my email's also on there because I won't just like spurt that out because it's got numbers in there and I don't want to.
Fair enough. Oh, Conor, you've given us a wealth of things to think about and shared your knowledge so coherently with us. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on. I've been excited for this ever since you floated the idea past me. I've been like thinking about it non-stop. It's
oh, bless you. Thank you so much for quoting from the podcast and being so well prepared.
Well, they've taught me so much and also helped me get such an insight into different areas of this wonderful instrument that we like to use. So I think that it's may it ever continue.
Oh, thank you so much, Conor. And I mean, you did ask at the very beginning, when we first got on, if you could sing the jingle. So you can sing us out if you want.
Oh gosh. Ah.